I'll ever beat, I guess.
Okay, we're live. I know it's been a while, folks, out there, but I'm back. And with me tonight are Andy Briner and Joseph Morrison. These are the two candidates that are running for the Republican nomination for Congressional District 1. Now, I ran for this one about 6 years ago as a libertarian, and this is my opportunity to introduce these two fantastic individuals to the idea of a town hall. So we have a virtual one going on tonight. I know I sent out an invitation on a couple, and we're starting to get some people watching live. Go ahead and ask questions as you go along. But we're going to go ahead and start with a quick introduction. Joseph, if you'd be so kind, 3 minutes.
Yeah. So my name is Joe. I was born in Boise and raised in Grandview, Idaho, in the little middle of nowhere. Grew up, graduated from Rimrock. At 21, I joined the Marine Corps. Did that for 9 years. I was in communications, and that was a lot of help for everything that I'm working at right now. Outside of that, I was also a recruiter, and that really helped with a lot of different aspects of public speaking and communications as well, building networks inside of where you are, and that was kind of what I was doing as well. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Andy, you're up.
Yeah, just want to say, Joe, I appreciate you putting this together, and that you invited me on to talk about this. So I think it's great. Appreciate that. I am Andy Briner. I am born and raised in Melba, Idaho. Lived out in Murphy area for most of that time, going to Melba High School. I studied at BYU, Idaho, got a degree in political science, emphasizing in U.S. government. Did some time as a lobbyist when I was going to school. Learned a lot about the system that way, kind of became depressed with the system that way. And that was just in Idaho. So then I kind of left that, wanted to figure out what to do with my life after that. Anyway, I currently now design kitchens for a cabinet company, and I'm working on my small farm out in Parma, Idaho, with my 2 kids, 2 boys and my wife, and we're expecting a baby girl here in July. So we are excited about that, and I'm excited about this opportunity.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations, Andy. So you all had the questions. You've had an opportunity to look them over and prepare your answers. So let's go ahead and go with Andy on this first one. So, Andy, how to make housing more affordable, not only for us, but for future generations?
All right, this is a good question. I think this is a problem that our generation, Joe's and my generation, probably struggle with the most. I remember it being a common debate among my friends about housing and all of that, and it seems like it's only gotten worse as we've gotten older. The direct answer is I don't know how much the government can do to solve the problem. I think it could get out of the way of a lot of things, and I do think that a good point that Joe had brought up in his email was the BlackRock and the large corporations buying housing, and that I think maybe putting in some legislations that way. I've also felt like the hustle culture has had an impact of that, where everyone's kind of like go out, buy a rental, open up a short-term rental like Airbnb, Vrbo, and that way. I know a lot of people who end up doing that, and that limits the amount of houses that are on the market. And I don't know what laws or regulation could be put in that way, but I do believe it has a large impact on the shortage of housing. But I think one way would be limiting regulations so that we could build houses quicker, faster, kind of let the government and the red tape get out of the way. could definitely be one of those options.
Okay, Joseph, you're up. Joe, you're up.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with that. And there's just a couple little things that I would add on to that is I do feel like some of the building that we do currently is more geared towards larger scale versus smaller home as well. I think that could be worked in there as well. But yeah, get BlackRock out of there, get Blackstone, all of those corporations out of the single family home area. We don't need that in our society, in my opinion. And President Donald J. Trump too has signed his executive order saying that corporations could no longer do it. Congress hasn't taken the necessary steps to invoke that into law as of yet. And so that's something I would really like to see as well, is to see Congress go ahead and put that foot forward and say, we're going to actually make it so corporations can't buy these single family homes is I think what I would say about that.
Okay, both pretty solid. And I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that, as far as BlackRock being one of the problems and overregulation of a housing market being another. So, Joe, you get the next question. How best to implement term limit policies?
I mean, I'm personally willing to sign the term limit policies, and it has been legislation already pushed to these side committees and everything like that, but it isn't getting enough traction from the Congress at this point in time. And that's kind of where you need to get these people who don't believe that as much out of there, and you need a larger force. And I feel like with the movement coming, I feel like that's what we need, is the bodies to kind of help pull that out of these dead committees and put it on the floor and vote for term limits for Congress and put our name on record.
Okay, Andy?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Joe was saying there. I mean, term limits, one thing that we can do, I mean, more than just sign the document, sign the law, enact the law. I would say that, we need to also pressure other congressmen that way, and pressure constituents and get it out there, that other congressmen are refusing to sign it, and make it more public. And as a congressman, you would have a little more of a platform to do that. So I think kind of pressuring your colleagues is what it would amount to, as well as being willing to sign it. But yeah, 100%, I agree that we need term limits, and I'd be willing to sign any bill that would enact that law.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So Andy, we'll go ahead and have you start out question number 3. How should we be handling the issuance or the issues of public lands?
This is a question that I'm not all public lands. I'm not that familiar with the laws in that place. I do know recently, Mike Lee from Utah suggested that we lower our debt or pay for things through the sale of public lands, which I think that sounds a little crazy to me. I know that as many of us are hunters or outdoorsmen, we really enjoy that public land. We benefit from it. I do think that we need to better regulate forests and things like that through logging to prevent the wildfires. So there's some things that we could do on that end, but I do disagree with the selling of public lands, especially to private corporations, people, companies that way. And I would fight against selling any of the public lands if there wasn't, unless there was a really valid reason to do so.
Okay, Joe, public land issues, you're up.
All right. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Andy was saying about public lands is, and not only that, but to add to it is, I would say about ranches and farms, because there are public lands out there that ranchers and stuff do use for grazing. And I think that's an important piece to it as well. So we really just need to take into consideration all of these aspects and growing up in the desert like Melva or Murphy, we understand that water is an issue. There are major issues with water shortages, having to dig deeper for the aquifer, stuff like that. And that all comes into that. They'll play with public lands because we don't want to be robbing our soil of the water either. Stopping AI data centers, I think is a big key to that. Initiating more regulations against those specifically until we know what their impact on the environment actually is, in my opinion, is where we should go with that. See what the actual electricity usage is, see what the actual runoff is. We need to know it. We can't be just blindly going into the AI without thinking about the humans, because we had lead in the water in Idaho all the time. So just things to think about, in my opinion.
Okay, so I'm going to bring something up here real quick. Braxton McCoy has the Sagebrush Institute, and he's been pushing an awful lot for a conservative movement to preserve American wilderness, particularly here in Idaho, since this is where he currently lives. Now, he's worked with Idaho Senator Ben Adams on a constitutional amendment that would prevent the legislature from selling state land. Now, if that were to happen at the state level, how would you work at the federal level in order to ensure maximum capability of the states to manage their land, knowing the states couldn't sell them? Go ahead and start with you, Joe.
So I would say be a force for that, to make it to where states can't sell their land, because that is one of the things that is the weak point in these federal land holdings and everything, because when the state gets a hold of them, they loosen the grip and are able to sell it. Is from what we've seen. The issue that comes to mind with that is in Stanley area, there was the public land that was sold and the easement that was taken away. So I'd push to reinforce that states can't sell their public land.
Andy?
Yeah, and just so I understood the question, are we saying that the states would not have the right to sell the public land? And so on the federal level, if that law passed at the state level, how would we help that? Because my initial thought is that if I knew that the states weren't able to sell, then I would want the federal government to give kind of that control over to the states. Is that kind of the question you were asking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the states have a way better understanding of how to protect their land, and the people there, to manage it, take care of it. Because I'm definitely a proud Idahoan, and I imagine other people are too, and they're proud of the land that they have, and they're more willing to protect it than some government agency off in Washington, D.C.
Excellent. Okay, so question number 4. Foreign aid. How best to bring up more strict laws on sending unchecked funds overseas? Let's go ahead, Andy.
I think, especially with the Ukraine funding that we've been giving to Ukraine for this war, I think Rand Paul had probably some of the best bills that he put forward, some regulations on that, to monitor where that money was going. Ideally, in that case, it would be best if we weren't sending any of this, federal aid over to other governments to use. So I think, there's so much corruption in Washington, D.C. that way, that everyone's kind of bought and paid for by foreign interests, is what it seems like currently. There's probably a few good ones out there. But if we could really just focus on here in the United States, the people here, and fixing that, and kind of, for the time being, if not indefinitely, withhold all federal aid going to other countries and other foreign interests, would be a main point that I'd like to make.
Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with that, and I we see the bills go all the time for foreign aid to foreign countries, and they get passed all like pretty consistently through Congress. I would continually vote no on that on those items specifically because we do need to work here back at home. Infrastructure, power, electricity is going to be a huge thing coming up. Manufacturing, because we're bring if as a nation we want to bring manufacturing back to the states, we will need electricity for these facilities to run them. Everything in that nature needs to be updated. We don't need to be sending the money out overseas to not for the betterment either. And that's one of the things in my issue is it doesn't seem like that we cause stability through the world. From my eyes, it looks like we cause a lot of this destability, and I think that we need to center ourselves as Americans.
Now, one of the things with regards to particularly foreign spending is you are running for a House seat. You know, in the U.S. Congress, the House is responsible. They hold the purse strings. You know, you'd be responsible for first shot at the bills, writing them, amending them, and making sure that congressional spending goes where the people want it to. How do you feel your particular responsibility goes along those lines, Joe?
The highest responsibility. Um, it's hard work money. We're being taxed up to 40% of our wages. Uh, this isn't this isn't a mega yacht on the ocean. It's a hamburger helper for the night or something. Um, and I don't think that our Congress takes the care enough for the power of the purse in that regards. They don't think about the human aspect of it, and I think that'll bring that point of view to the power of the purse of how is this actually going to help? How is this going to pick up somebody who needs it versus at a extra lobster? Um, I guess that's kind of where I fall on that. So we need to be more strategic in handling our budget. We need to spend it more wisely back home. We can implement policies that help that of with the money that we don't spend overseas, we can bring back home. Social Security and Medicaid are usually the ones that are in the green in regards to taxation, and that's like the lowest that we get taxed on. So I think we need to take reconsideration. And if we're really looking at it, military industrial complex is the $1.7 trillion budget for military. What are we getting in regards? What are we actually getting for that? I think that's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in there.
Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, I agree with Joe and what he said. Specifically on the military industrial complex. I mean, I'm not one for big social programs, but I would much rather spend five billion, $50 billion, whatever we spent already on this war,
I know.
on social programs here rather than bombing the Middle East. I mean, there's so much more so much more that we could do, and in the Congress, I mean, we could really, since we hold the purse strings, I mean, we could really restrict that budget and really hold that back and really, you know, hold them accountable that way, and use the money wisely that we tax people with. Because I mean, like Joe was saying, 40% is a ridiculous amount. I think we could do with a lot less with the military industrial complex, and we could do with a lot less taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, Andy, Joe, this next one, it's a really big one. So we're all familiar with the Idaho GOP platform and the fact that the Idaho Republican Party, as a platform piece, believes in life at conception. Okay, with that in mind, knowing that you will be representing Idaho in Washington, working on federal regulations and legislation, how should we handle abortion laws? Andy, you're up.
All right. Well, I think one major step of the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade I think was a good thing. I think the abortion laws need to be taken back to the states. Personally, I do feel like, I mean, abortion is such a tricky subject. I don't know the way to do this. I would personally like a lot less abortions. I don't know if the government regulating abortion is the answer to that. I also don't know if, just letting it go and everyone make their choice is also the right answer. I mean, we need to offer, as a community, as a state, we need to offer more support to women so that they can stay at home, so that they can raise their children. Single mothers, grandparents who are raising children, they need a lot more support so that they can do this. I mean, like we talked about before, the affordability crisis. I mean, I think that only exacerbates the issue of abortion, because if you can't afford to raise a kid, you're going to choose to do otherwise. And so I think tackling the affordability crisis would be a major benefit to preventing more abortions from happening. But like I said, the laws, I think going back to the state is the better option, but I don't know if the government's the best one to fully regulate abortion, because it's such a tricky subject and something that needs to be decided, prayed about with your family. But those are my opinions.
Joe, you're up.
Yeah, abortion laws are a tricky one. I really do like that they overturned Roe versus Wade, and that is one of my things. I do feel like it being with the state is the appropriate steps for this, and I do appreciate. I am in the opinion that it should be to the people. I think that there's a large barrier to people entering politics in Idaho. But I think that it should be set to the people to decide. I don't think that people on Capitol Hill should be deciding people's 2 million people's decisions. They can, I mean, they can put it on, and the people can vote for it, and I think that's the best choice for that. It takes it all the way out of the politicians, in my opinion. And so I personally, as abortion laws for the state go, pro-choice, because I don't think they should be regulating those personal decisions. As a personal level, I would always encourage pro-life. I'd always be willing to stand up and help if it's like my niece or nephew or any family member, anything in that nature. But I don't think that having the absolute inability to is the wise decision either, because there are extenuating circumstances. I'm not a doctor. Doctors all over the world have said things in ways of how this can help people in some circumstances, preventing from the woman dying as well, stuff like that. And I think there are some of those situations where it could be listen to the doctor, in my opinion, in that situation.
Okay, so as you both know, there is a petition circulating around the state of Idaho right now by the organization Idahoans United for Women and Children, which is an attempt to roll back abortion laws to the pre-Dodd ruling. Now, if they're successful at getting this on the ballot and it passes in November, how would you feel with regards to possibly overruling the will of the people in order to maintain our current legislation? Joe?
I would feel terrible about overruling the will of the people. If it's a Democratic vote on it and it passes, I feel like that would be opposite of what they would like to see. Yeah, I mean, we the people. It is we the people that we answer to as Congress. So I wouldn't feel okay with doing that.
Andy.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Joe. I mean, if you have a majority vote, Democratic vote on that, you can't overturn that. I mean, I think that's one of the most corrupt things that you could do is have, an entire majority of a population vote and it pass, and then to still try to prevent it with your small minority who are in power and can enact laws. With that said, though, I do think, if it did go through, I would like to implement, some ways to help others out so that the child could still be born, that abortion is the last option.
Excellent. Okay, our next question. This one's easy one, guys. How do we feel about the Second Amendment rights? Andy, you're up.
Strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I think the Republican Party has actually done us a disservice in the Second Amendment because I feel like they're the ones to enact most of the policy regulating the Second Amendment. And they can do it because they're, a wolf hiding in sheep's clothing. They say they support it, but what they do is seems to always add more regulation to it. So anything regarding the Second Amendment, I would support as little regulation on that as possible.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, it shall not be infringed. I do think that we are missing a more important part of the militia and building community and understanding the weapon systems, the rules, everything like that, certain trainings. But other than that, yeah, shall not be infringed is my opinion on the Second Amendment. It's for us. It's not for the government.
Okay. Next question. This one's real important to Idaho, especially with regards to labor relations right now and what some people consider replacement theory. So, what are your thoughts about immigration and your role as a congressman in the U.S. House in setting standards and policy for immigration into and out of the United States? Joe, you're up.
All right. So immigration reform, I think there should be immigration reform. I really like the secure borders. I've heard little to no crossings ever since President Trump. My issue comes in the form of masked, unwarranted, unknown people. And as I've learned a little bit more about ICE, they're only accountable to the executive branch as well. That just rings to me as executive overreach. I think about Ruby Ridge, some of the things that are in Idaho in history in regards to trust to those certain federal agencies that aren't accountable to anybody.
Andy.
Yeah. I think Joe brings up a good point with the masks with ICE. I mean, the government they need to be completely transparent in the rule of law and what they're doing. We don't need our federal agents masked and without body cams. I mean, we need to know what they're doing, how they're enacting these laws, or how they're enacting or how they're, acting around others. I mean, they need to be a lot better in the way they're handling this. I do think if we really cared about preventing illegal immigration, there'd be two things that we need to do. One, we need to make immigration a little easier for those who are trying to come over legally, who want to join America, join in its culture. I think it does need to be deregulated that way to make it easier, a better process. I've had many friends take years to become citizens. On the other end, if people were really serious about preventing immigration or removing immigrants who are here illegally, they would support laws that made employers, make sure that they're citizens, make sure that they're here legally. And I don't know if most of the citizens are ready for that. I think that's the way to properly do it. Make sure that everyone who is employed here is a legal citizen, and if they're not, then they can't get a job here, which would then cause them to go back to their homeland. So it's a tricky situation. I know many farmers out where I live who would not be in favor of that, but also then talk about how we need less immigration. We need make sure everyone's legal, but then don't really do it on their employment side. But that's what would need to be done.
Okay. So moving on from the immigration issue, which I know an awful lot of people are going to want more details on as we go on through the election season. Our next question. There was a vote on the House attempting to expose the sexual harassment that failed. How do you feel? I mean, because you would essentially be, you're vying for the seat that Russ Fulcher fills. And Russ was one of those who voted against this particular initiative or this particular legislation. How do you feel about our elected officials being able to conceal their crimes from the people by a simple majority vote? Andy.
I think that vote failing was an insult to every American. It just seems wild to me that they could get, that they can go through. It's wild to me that even any of those accusations and payoffs exist, and that we as the American people don't know about it, and that they refuse to show us. I mean, we need as much transparency in the government as we possibly can have, and that definitely starts with our representatives. That's a given. So,
Joe.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. My big thing is everything in the public servants should be public. If you want to be private, go to the private sector, but nothing in the public should be any service that you're doing in public there should be no privacy in that, in my opinion. Covering up these harassment suits, these sexual harassment suits and everything is it just really shows you how deeply corrupt it is, especially after that young lady lit herself on fire and everything. It's absolutely too much that's happening, and that's part of the reason that I feel like it's important for us to step up and speak out and at least try. Because yeah, we need to vote to uncover all of that. We need to show these sexual harassment suits where does it go into? Why is this serial sexual harasser still in Congress? That these are real situations we need to attest to and just attack head on, in my opinion.
Okay, so another question related to predators in powerful positions. The Epstein files. Okay, we've seen several votes go back and forth in Congress. One day they'll say, no, we're not going to release the Epstein files under those conditions. And then the next week it's like, okay, we're good with releasing them under a different set of conditions. And then we've continued to watch the Department of Justice, which has congressional oversight, continue to dodge the law that was written to expose that. What sort of remedies do you see as a congressman with regards to that? Joe, you're up.
Subpoenas, I guess it would be my first thing. We need to start subpoenaing these people that are in the files that we know about to bring them to justice. They need to be investigated thoroughly. I don't think that we need to know anything literally else about what happens in there, because it's the tip of the iceberg, and it is terrible. But we need to have those people held to account, and we are currently in a two-tiered system where what was happened in the Epstein saga is happening, and they are still out there. They're still not in jail. They're still not answering for their crimes. They're still not held to account. and that's part of the idea of having a lot of people that are like, we need the answers for this, and we need to do that. So subpoenas, vote for subpoenas if we can, to see if we can't get them to on trial on record, saying exactly everything they know about it. We do need to have everything that was in there investigated, in my opinion. If we haven't seen the crimes and there's still a trove, it needs to be uncovered.
Andy, you're up.
Yeah, the Epstein files honestly is one of the main reasons I considered running for this position. I was one day scrolling through my social media feed and saw a picture from the Epstein files, and it was one of those things that changed you. And I thought to myself, how can, if Russ Fulcher looked at this picture, how could he ever vote to keep this covered up? How could he not be there supporting Thomas Massie in calling for the resignation of Howard Lutnick and prosecuting Pam Bondi? I mean, this cover up, I think, is the heart and the core of our government corruption. And I mean, we need to do everything to support Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, anyone who's willing to speak out and speak up against it. They need our support, and that would be one of my number one issues as a congressman, to make sure that we receive the full and total release of the Epstein files, and make sure that every single person who is a co-conspirator is prosecuted.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up on a lighter note here. Andy, what's your favorite hobby?
I got into cast iron. I love restoring old cast iron. That's probably one of my favorite things. Small story is my mom was visiting this old lady. She had some old rusted cast iron in her barn. She gave it to her, and my mom's like, I don't know what to do with this. And so I looked up on Google one day how to fix it, and I ended up restoring this. If you know anything about cast iron, which I didn't at the time, but I ended up restoring a 12-inch Griswold cast iron, which is ended up looking online was $600, and I thought, wow, this is really cool that you could take this old rusted, destroyed object and bring it back to life, to where I cook in it every day. So that's one of my favorite hobbies.
That's awesome.
Joe, you're up.
I like riding motorcycles. I really like your restoration though. That's cool. I put a lot of miles on a motorcycle. When I first joined the Marine Corps, I bought a Buell, rode it from Quantico, Virginia to Daytona Beach for Bike Week. If you know how far that is, it took us 26 hours ish. It was a 2-day ride for me because we're fresh, and when I left Quantico, it was snowing, and this is the first time I ever really rode a bike for a long distance or whatever. And by the time we got down to Daytona Beach, it was 88 degrees and sunshine. But I put 30,000 miles on a motorcycle, rode it all over the Appalachian Mountains, Blue Ridge, and Tail the Dragon. If you're a rider, it was so fun. So I guess that'd be my favorite hobby is riding motorcycles.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Joe, why don't you tell everybody how they can find you, what your social media is, your website?
Yeah, so my website is morrisonforidaho.com. That's Morrison, the number 4id.com. That's how you'd be able to locate my website, and then I'll have some social media. I have some social medias attached to that: YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Okay, Andy.
Yeah, my website's brinerforcongress.com, and then I've got social medias attached to that. I've got Andy Briner for Congress at Facebook. Instagram is Briner for Congress, and on X it's Briner for Congress, I believe, or Briner Congress is what it is on X. Kind of both of them are new, so working on those, but that's what I've got.
Okay, give me a moment here. I'm typing this out in the notes. Okay. So everybody's got Briner for Congress.com and Morrison for Idaho.com. And thank you all for coming on tonight. I know it's a little bit short notice. And welcome to the experience. It only gets harder from here.
It's day one.
Day one. Okay. You guys have a great evening. And
Thanks.
I'm signing off.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.